Still doing those little community builds, Maya? Landon said it loud enough to carry across the cocktail table. Loud enough that the four people standing around him all turned to look at me at once. He swirled his whiskey glass with a smile that hadn't changed in 8 years. The same lazy, self-satisfied smirk he used to wear whenever he wanted to remind me that I didn't quite belong somewhere. My name is Maya Hollister. I'm 31 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life trying to outrun the version of myself that a certain kind of man decided I was. I met Landon Rowe my sophomore year at the University of Illinois. He was in the business school, I was in architecture, and for about 14 months we built something I genuinely thought was love. He was sharp and funny and ambitious in a way that I mistook for passion. What I didn't understand until it was too late was that Landon's ambition was entirely about being seen, about ranking, about knowing exactly where everyone fell on his invisible hierarchy, and making sure they knew it too. The night everything cracked open, we were at a dinner hosted by his fraternity alumni. I had just found out I'd been accepted into the Meridian Architecture Fellowship in Chicago, one of the most competitive summer programs in the Midwest for students in my field. I told him on the drive there, expecting him to be proud. Instead, over dinner, in front of 6 of his friends and their dates, he said, with a smile, "Maya got into some architecture summer camp. Very cute. Hopefully it comes with a stipend, because her family could use the help." He laughed. Everyone at the table laughed. And I sat there, cheeks burning, dressed suddenly too thin, wondering how I had handed so much of myself to someone who could look at my future and see a punchline about my bank account. I broke up with him 2 weeks later. He told his friends I couldn't handle being with someone at his level. I let him believe that. After college, I poured myself into work the way only someone with something to prove can. I got my architecture license. I spent 4 years at a mid-sized firm in Indianapolis, learned everything I could, and 3 years ago I opened my own studio, Hollister Design Group. Small, but ours. We specialize in mixed-income housing and community development, the kind of work that doesn't always make the glossy magazines, but changes what a block looks like for 50 years. I am proud of that in a way I still don't have the right words for. And somewhere along the way, I met my husband. But I'll get to that. The invitation came through my firm's email in early November. The Grand Gateway Foundation Gala, a black-tie charity fundraiser at the Langham Hotel in Chicago, supporting affordable housing initiatives across the Midwest. I almost passed on it. My firm had partnered with the foundation on a project 2 years back, and they kept us on the standing invite list. But black tea galas aren't exactly my natural environment. I'm more comfortable at job sites in steel-toed boots than in a hotel ballroom in heels. It was my husband who convinced me to go. "You should be in that room," he said over dinner one night when I was talking myself out of it out loud. "Your work belongs in that conversation." He was right. Our Ashwood Commons project, 42 units of affordable housing built on a former industrial lot on Chicago's west side, had just been shortlisted for a National Design Award. If there was ever a night to walk into a room full of developers, investors, and civic leaders and simply be present, this was it. So I went. I wore a deep green dress I'd bought on sale 6 months ago and never found an occasion for. Simple cut, clean lines. The kind of dress that doesn't announce itself. I arrived on time, which in gala culture apparently means 15 minutes before anyone who matters shows up. I got a glass of sparkling water, found the corner of the room where the design and development crowd had clustered, and fell into a genuinely good conversation with a woman running a housing nonprofit in Milwaukee. And then I heard him. "Still doing those little community builds, Maya?" Landon materialized at the edge of my peripheral vision, already angled so the group around him could see my reaction. He looked almost exactly as I remembered. Tan, groomed, the kind of put-together that takes real effort to make look effortless. His jacket probably cost more than my first month of rent in my first post-college apartment. He stepped forward and extended a hand like we were old colleagues at a networking event. Like none of it had ever happened. Landon, I said. I shook his hand because I was raised to be civil. I saw your name on the attendee list. Small world. He let his eyes sweep over my dress once. A quick practiced assessment, not quite rude enough to call out, but landing exactly as intended. Are you here on the nonprofit side or design side? I said. Hollister Design Group has been partnering with the foundation for a few years now. Right. He nodded the way people do when they aren't listening. Then he shifted slightly, pulling the three men standing with him into the conversation. Maya and I went to school together. She does community architecture. Very grassroots. Very. He paused with the performance of someone who has already found the word he wants. Humble work. One of the men chuckled. Another looked somewhere past my shoulder. I felt the old heat move up the side of my neck. That particular, specific shame of being in a room full of people whose opinions shouldn't touch you. And feeling them touch you anyway. Landon wasn't finished. He leaned in slightly, just enough to seem casual. I'm here representing Roe Kelton Development tonight. We're in the final stages of securing a co-investment partnership on a 9-figure mixed-use development along the lakefront. Institutional money. Top-tier scope. He said it with the satisfaction of a man who has been waiting all evening for exactly this conversation. But good on you for sticking with the smaller scale. Not everyone's built for the bigger stage. The man beside him smiled thinly. The woman from Milwaukee had quietly taken half a step away. The way people do when they don't want to be standing next to something uncomfortable. I looked at Landon. I thought about the families who moved into Ashwood Commons last spring. About the mother who stopped by the job site 3 weeks before completion because she'd heard her unit was almost ready. And she just needed to see it with her own eyes. About how she stood in the empty doorway and didn't say anything for a long moment. I thought about all the things I could say to Landon right now. I had plenty of material. But I didn't need any of it. I know what my work is worth, I said. Quiet, steady, no defensiveness, no heat, no need for him to agree. Just the truth, sitting in the air between us. I reached over and set my glass on a nearby high top. I was already turning my attention elsewhere when the room changed. It wasn't dramatic. It was more like a pressure shift. The way a room full of people will redirect their collective attention without anyone announcing it. Conversations went slightly quiet. Heads turned toward the main entrance. Even the string quartet in the far corner fumbled a half beat before recovering. My husband had walked in. I watched him cross the ballroom toward me. Charcoal suit, unhurried stride, the particular kind of presence that fills space without requiring it. He wasn't scanning the room. He was looking for me specifically, and when he found me, the line of his shoulders relaxed by a fraction that only I would notice. Sorry, sweetheart. He came to my side, pressed a kiss to my temple, his hand settling at the small of my back. Flight from Boston landed 20 minutes late. I came straight from O'Hare. You didn't have to rush, I said. I know. He said it simply and meant it completely. I heard Landon go very quiet beside me. My husband turned to look at him. Not with hostility, not with theater, just calm, direct attention, the particular kind that doesn't need to perform anything because it doesn't have anything to prove. Landon Rowe, my husband said. It wasn't quite a greeting. And the way Landon said his name back, Mr. Harding, told me everything. His glass tilted at an odd angle in his hand. The smirk was completely gone. My husband, Grant Harding, is the CEO of Harding Capital Group, one of the largest private real estate investment firms in the country. He doesn't go to many galas. He came to this one because I was going. Because my project was going to be in the opening remarks. And because 3 years of marriage have taught him that the things I tend to downplay are usually the things most worth showing up for. I didn't realize you two, Landon started. We're married? Grant said pleasantly. 3 years this June. The silence from Landon's side of the conversation was the loudest thing in the room. Grant tilted his head slightly. I couldn't help but overhear. You mentioned Roe Kelton's lakefront development, the co-investment submission your firm sent to our acquisitions team 6 weeks ago. The man who had chuckled at Landon's comment went very still. My team has been conducting due diligence on that package for over a month, Grant continued, his voice unhurried, entirely controlled. One of the primary factors we evaluate before committing to a long-term partnership isn't just the numbers. It's the character of the people we'd be working with. How they treat people in rooms where they think it doesn't count. Whether what they present publicly matches who they actually are. He paused. We take that assessment seriously. Landon's face had moved through 3 different expressions in about 10 seconds. The easy confidence that had been sitting on him all evening was entirely gone. What was left was something unsteady and exposed. A man watching the math he thought he'd already solved recalculate in real time. Mr. Harding, Landon said, and his voice had gone thin. He shifted his weight forward in the way of someone reaching for a foothold. I think there may have been a misunderstanding. Maya and I are old friends. You were explaining to the people around you that my wife's work doesn't meet your definition of serious development, Grant said. Still calm. Still perfectly level. Her firm designed Ashwood Commons. I've been to that site. I've walked those units. I know exactly what that project is and what it took to build it. He looked at Landon steadily. And I know that a man who talks down to people in public because he's calculated they can't do anything about it is the same man who does it in a boardroom. That's not a partner Harding Capital enters into 9-figure agreements with. The room around us had gone genuinely quiet. People who hadn't been watching before were watching now. Roe Kelton will receive our formal decision by end of week, Grant added, as though he were simply concluding a loose thread. I don't anticipate the outcome will come as a surprise. Landon stood perfectly still. His mouth opened once and closed again. I watched him understand in the space of about 4 seconds exactly what had just happened to the deal he'd been holding up like a trophy 60 seconds ago. One of the men who'd been standing with him quietly stepped back. Then the other one. For a moment, something almost like sympathy flickered at the edge of me. It didn't stay long. Grant turned to me and offered his arm with that small, private smile. The one that belongs to just the two of us. The one I've been collecting since our second date. They're about to start the program. I heard the foundation is featuring Ash in the opening presentation. I didn't know that, I said. They are. He said it with quiet pride, the kind that doesn't need an audience. I thought you should be in the room for it. I took his arm, and we walked toward the main hall together. I didn't look back once. I want to be honest, because I think it matters. The best moment of that evening wasn't watching the deal fall apart. It wasn't the silence that followed Grant's last sentence, or the way the men around Landon peeled away like they'd never been standing there. Those things happened, and I won't pretend they didn't carry a particular weight, the kind that sits in the body, not the head, and that I have no interest in apologizing for. But the best moment came before any of it. It was when I set down my glass and said, I know what my work is worth, and I meant it. Not for Landon, not for the people listening. I meant it the way I mean things, when I'm standing on a completed site, watching a family carry their furniture through a front door for the first time. I meant it the way I mean things, when the structural calculations work and the walls are plumb, and everything I put on paper 3 years ago is now standing in the physical world, keeping people dry and warm. That sentence cost me nothing because I didn't need anything from him. That's the part that took years. The fellowship that Landon called summer camp in front of his friends led to the internship that became my career. The humble work he dismissed at the Gala is the same work that brought me into partnership with the Grand Gateway Foundation, which is the same foundation whose event put me in the same room as the man I eventually married. The community builds, he thought, weren't serious, are what put my name on a screen in the opening remarks of that ballroom in front of 200 people who understand exactly what serious development looks like. He didn't need to know any of that. I didn't need him to. What I needed, I had already built. A firm from scratch, work I'm proud of in a way money can't replicate, and a partner who rerouted his evening from Logan Airport to be standing next to me when my name was announced. That's not a small life. That is the specific, deliberate life I chose with both hands. There's a particular kind of freedom that comes from being underestimated. Long enough that you stop waiting for the correction. You stop needing the person who was wrong about you to revise their opinion. You stop measuring the distance between where they placed you and where you actually are, because the distance stopped mattering. You're just living your life, doing your work, building what you set out to build. I exhaled something that night at the Langham that I think I'd been holding since I was 20 years old at a dinner table, in a dress that wasn't quite right, in a room where I didn't quite fit. I fit now. I built the table.